Hello. Welcome to the Terrific Tips for Business podcast, because you can't say terrific without Terry. I am your guest host, CJ Howard. In this segment of the podcast, I'm interviewing exceptional artists who overlap business and art. So today's guest is Nina Lance. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Nina. Nina is a Korean American artist. Prior to devoting her time to art and painting, she was a professional photographer for 10 years. So you know what you are doing. Her work has been published in leading industry sites and magazines such as Style Me Pretty, The Knot, and Italian Vogue. Nina has also worked in the fashion industry as a designer. Her inspirations include travel, interior design, music, and her life in Southern California. Although she is self-taught, she has been painting and creating since her youth, and she currently lives in Los Angeles with her husband and her son and their rescue puppy. So, Nina, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here with me
Hey,
today.
thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, awesome. Well, I'm so excited to learn from you because you have such an exceptional online presence, and that's why I'm so excited for you to be able to share with folks today. Um, so I wanted to ask you, my first question is, when did you make that decision to go from, art as your hobby, so more painting, because I know you were doing photography, so more
Right.
painting as your hobby to painting as a business?
Actually, it all happened kind of overnight, really quickly. Um, I was
Cool.
doing, yeah, I know it is really cool. So I was doing photography up until I had my son in 2016, and the pregnancy went well. However, prior to having our son, I went through three pregnancy losses.
Oh my goodness.
So add that to postpartum depression and anxiety. I went through a lot of mental upheaval and whatnot. And I just, because of postpartum depression, I just could not do photography anymore. I had a hard time working with clients, going on job sites. It was my anxiety and depression were really hindering my career. So I've always been a creative person and I needed an outlet. And so I thought, I used to paint all the time, almost every day of my life. And I stopped doing it when I went to college. And it was like 20 years ago. So I went to the art supply store and just grabbed whatever I could remember as far as supplies to use, and just bought a brush and some paint and just went from there. And um, started sharing it on social media and whatnot, and it got a really good reception. My work got really good reception, and really that's what led me to, I guess, being just a creative person, and then moving on to a business creative person, which sounds like an oxymoron. But
I was actually chatting with another artist about how artists kind of we become project managers in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Like we have to have a brain for not just the creative side of things, but understanding all the pieces that go into that.
yeah.
So, I mean, you knew that coming from photography too.
And it's just not artists, it's, I think, just self-employed people. That's what we are. We're self-employed. We're artists first, but we're also self-employed, and this is our livelihood. So we have to put on many different hats, and it's a lot. I mean, it's not just us in a studio painting all day long. I mean, we have emails to reply to. We have to price our work and make sure that we're getting compensated enough for our time and our efforts. Yeah, it's a lot of balancing.
It is. And especially, you have a little one at home. So like balancing that on top of all of your other things in your life, it can be a lot because I personally feel like I can sometimes paint when my little one is around, but like I need some space if I'm gonna like actually focus. So
Yes,
there's a
exactly.
lot of moving parts. So
Yes. And when we paint, we I mean, at least for myself, I tend to get into the zone. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, where you're just in this bubble, and to have that interrupted, it can be so disruptive to your creative process. So it's hard when you have little ones around. It really is.
yeah. And I think just in case folks are not familiar with your work, I feel like color understanding is truly exceptional. Like you are able to make unexpected pairings that really work well, and your pieces feel simple yet complex. And I think that's such a hard balance, right? To like have something that you can look at and understand immediately, but then you're like, oh, but I do want to look at that for another couple of hours. That'll work for me. So I think that especially in that, like, you may be an artist who does that instinctively and it just happens, or you may rework a piece a little bit. So how do you feel about that?
It depends on the piece. Every piece is different. Some pieces come to you so easily and you're just, half an hour into it, you're like, I'm done. This looks great. I'm so happy with it, which is rare, right? That rarely happens. But usually for myself, I go through many different layers of paint, and I go through a lot of white paint.
That's true. There's a lot of white in your pieces. Yes, I can see that.
And it's just, I make a lot of changes. So what I start with and what I end up with, it's like night and day sometimes. And I don't even know how I get there, but it happens and I'm grateful for it. But yeah, it is a whole process.
That's beautiful. I think that's so true, right? Every piece is its own, and sometimes like the way I feel about it is like a piece is going to become what it is, whether you get in the way or not. So sometimes it's better to just let go.
Yes, you put it so beautifully. You got to let go. They have a life of their own, and you do have to let go. That's a great way of putting it.
I'm so excited to have you here. You have such a fantastic perspective. So I wanted to ask you a specific question, which is, what has been the highlight of your career as a painter? I will say that, like, since I know that you've done so much photography and that's a different, brain and a different audience, a different industry, but what has been the highlight of painting for you?
Oh God. Couple main things are the people that I've met along the way. Artists are phenomenal people, and they're just so warm and receptive and supportive. And I haven't come across a lot of competition. In fact, more so, I've made more friends in the art world than the photography world. It's been a wonderful journey for me in that aspect. And another thing is, it's very therapeutic. It's been, I've used my art as a source of therapy, and I actually took a break from seeing my therapist because I had my art to turn to, and it was helping me so much. So art therapy is a wonderful thing too.
That's beautiful. That's exactly why I got into painting again too, is I had a very
Oh,
similar story to you,
oh
where like after my son was born, I had a really intense postpartum experience as well. And that's the thing that got me through and got me to
yeah,
the other side, was painting.
me too. Me too.
So I
Yeah.
completely like so understand that perspective.
That's awesome that we had such a similar journey together. Yeah.
Yes. And also so amazing that our work is so different. Like, I mean, we don't paint similarly, but like the motivation can be so close.
No, I mean, our work is so different, but like your work, there's so much honesty in it, and there's so much there's so much love in your work. That's what I love about your pieces. Like, I can feel the love you have for your subjects, and like just the way you want to honor them. And like Lex Marie, who's Lex Marie,
Oh, she's excellent.
awesome, right? Amazing. And you did that painting of her and her son, and I was just it blew me away. It was so beautiful, and to me it was like two my favorite artists coming together. It was so awesome to see on Instagram.
I think just as a tangent, like I found Instagram to be so supportive in that way, like of finding not only collectors or clients, but like finding other artists who are doing fascinating work, are doing the hard work, are like understand the hustle that is involved. And it's nice to create a community. And I think if I
Yes.
hadn't already been on that platform during this, this isolation time, I would have felt so much more isolated. But I
Yeah.
feel like we kind of had each other bounce things with
Totally.
and talk about stuff with. And that's been a surprising, like, I wouldn't have expected it, but it's been amazing.
It has been amazing. And, this pandemic just put a lot of things into perspective. And it's weird because I've noticed that people I've never met personally in my life, I mean, we live in different states, different cities, but they've become some of my most trusted friends. And it's been wonderful. It's crazy to think that way, right? But people I've never met in my life have become such good friends of mine whom I can turn to and just, be honest with and truthful and share my truths with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's been a one great thing to come out of this pandemic.
Absolutely. And another thing that I've noticed from your platform is you are very vocal about like the social issues that you feel strongly about.
Yeah.
And have you noticed that that has aided you in kind of figuring out who your people are is by being vocal about like, okay, this is where I stand.
I mean, being on social media, we all go through, should I post this? Is this something that's going to be detrimental? Is this going to make me look bad? Is this going to make me look good? How is this going to be received? I mean, it's scary to put yourself out there in any which way or form. Um, but when the Black Lives Matter movement happened over the summer, and it's something that I've followed along very closely. Something that, I mean, as an Asian American, racism affects me every day as well. So from that aspect, because I'm also affected by it, why wouldn't I be empathetic and sympathetic towards the Black Lives Matter movement? It's so important. I don't understand people who don't get it. I don't understand
Mhm.
people who don't accept the movement or who don't think it's important. It is so vital. I mean, it's holding our society back.
Mhm.
The racism and the stereotyping is holding our society back, and it's we need to speak out about it. It is time. It's long overdue.
I so hear you. And I think that it's been a struggle, I think, for a lot of small businesses to figure out how do they want to speak about that. And I I love that it seems like in some ways like you are very active in your stories on Instagram, and then
Mhm.
so like you have some amazing like reposting that you do there so that you can I've found actually some great resources through your stories,
Oh, thank
which has been awesome. And so I think that in some ways like it can help if you feel like okay that there's a specific way that I'm going to share that content, and then I'll
you.
share
Right,
other content in my like on my Facebook or on my Instagram
right.
feed, so having some parameters for yourself can be
Yes,
helpful.
yes. So on my feed, I share mostly my art, and once in a while, I'll share political things here and there on my feed. I like to keep it fairly neutral.
Hmm.
Just because I feel like there are other voices that need to be elevated more so than mine, which is
Hmm.
why I use my stories a lot and why I like to repost lessons and whatnot from other Instagrammers who are far more knowledgeable than I am, who have far more experience than I am, and their voices need to be heard. So it's not my voice that needs to be elevated at all.
Hmm.
Actually, I think my voice, I should take more steps back, because there are so many more important people that need to be on the forefront.
I love that, and I found it to be a fascinating opportunity, especially in the arts, right? Like we are content creators, but we are also platforms, so like that we get to highlight other people. It doesn't always have to be about what we're doing. And I think you are wonderful at making sure that other voices are being heard through your platform.
Oh, thank
And I encourage everyone who's listening to this or viewing this to like go and check out not only your Instagram page, but the rest of everything else that you're doing. And we'll do more
you.
about sharing about that as well. Um, but I did want to kind of sidetrack a little bit, because we've touched on it some. But so since COVID-19 has happened, have you noticed you've had to shift your business side of things, your marketing side of things, or you feel like you're just kind of in the same groove that you've been?
Um, from the business side, I feel like um, I've I haven't changed much of anything from the business side, and I haven't really needed to. It's amazing to see that people are still collecting art in times like this, which speaks volumes, right? Art is so necessary, and so fundamental. So it was for myself. It was so interesting to see that in the middle of a pandemic, I was still selling art.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked, to be honest with you. I was like, who's buying art right now? I thought everyone was buying toilet paper. So that was a really pleasant surprise. And the other thing that I struggled with tremendously during the pandemic was the creative blocks that would come. And that just came from the anxiety of not knowing what was going on in this world, what our day was going to look like tomorrow, um, whether we're going to have enough toilet paper. I mean, it's just little things like that piling up one after another. And I remember just shutting down creatively. Did you go through that same thing too?
I had some moments of that, but for folks who aren't aware, like LA got hit so much worse like than we did here in North Carolina. I mean, like
Yeah,
we had shut down for a while, but we were able to at least release a little bit of that starting in like July, August. So I mean, but you
right.
guys were in super hard shutdown for
Yeah,
so long.
yeah,
And so I can see that as well. Like here, folks, we have yards and we can play in the yard and we can,
right.
like we can go on a walk in the public parks because the public parks were still open, and like all these, like
Yeah.
everything was shut down for you, like
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I couldn't even go to an art supply store. I had to order everything online, and yeah, LA was literally on lockdown.
Mhm.
So just being home, being stuck at home, all the museums are closed, and we used to love going to museums on the weekends and just getting as much inspiration as you possibly can, and that was taken away. So I no longer had that. So just finding creative outlets, creative sources to pull from, that was really hard during the pandemic. But honestly, thank God for Instagram, where I discovered you. I discovered so many other wonderful artists who are so inspiring.
I so hear you, and I think I think we're probably all also now like a little bit screened out, right? Like we're kind of all done with being on our
Yeah,
devices because we've been on them for many months now.
yeah,
Um, so I'm hoping that, that was a great phase, but I'm hoping we're going to be able to take these new connections that we've learned and the new inspirations that we've found, and to be able to do some more like real in the world things with
yeah,
that information. So I really hear you on that. Like, I it's been hard even here to not have museums, like those only opened a very short
yeah.
time ago, and that I didn't personally realize how much I depended on these
Me,
things
same.
to be okay. Like,
To thrive, yeah. You don't realize the little things you need in order to thrive and feel grounded.
yes.
Um,
And
yeah,
I think that's a fantastic word. Like thriving was really like we went from thriving to surviving, and hopefully
yeah,
now we're going to be able to get back to it, right? Like,
yeah.
so
Hopefully,
I wanted to again just make sure that we can cover my last question, which is if there was one piece of advice that you could give to somebody who's just starting out wanting to sell their paintings or even start painting, like what is the one thing that you found to be the most true bit of advice for you?
just start.
Mm,
Just start. Be scared. You're gonna be scared. Be scared. Enjoy that fear, because you're not gonna have that fear again. That fear of that taking that first leap. You'll never have that adrenaline rush again, and you just got to start. You just have to pick it up and do it, and you'll never know if you don't start. You'll never know.
That is the best advice. I've not heard that specific advice, and I love it because that's like, I think we need to tell ourselves that every single day, right? Like every single day that we sit down to do any piece of art, I still feel that fear,
Yeah,
that anxiety of like, oh, this is going to be the piece that sucks, you know? Like,
exactly. And as someone who's been an entrepreneur for many years, the one piece of advice I can just confidently give people is take that first step, just start, and everything will fall into place if you love what you do and you do it out of love.
mm, yes.
Yeah.
I think that love is such a key piece, right? Like, because we can have the best business plans in the world about what we think will work, but if it's not coming from this wellspring of love, it just doesn't, it just never quite pans out. Or if it does pan out, you're miserable. Like,
Yeah. Yes. You're miserable and it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't
mm,
feel right for your life and for yourself. And that's what makes people unhappy with their careers.
mm,
So it's if you have an idea, if you have a passion that, something you always thought, oh, if when I retire or when I have money, it's not going to happen. It doesn't matter whether you retire or have money. You just have to start.
mm.
You have to start chasing your dreams.
And I hope that maybe that's one thing that comes out of this time, these few months, is I think a lot of people had that shakeup of like, you don't know
Yeah,
that career that you took as a safety net is gonna last. And
exactly.
why not take the risk of doing what you love doing and finding out how that can be financially viable? Because it is
Uh,
possible. Like as you were saying, like people are still buying art even in a pandemic, and no one would have necessarily guessed that. But I think when you find these things that artists who are making work that resonates with love and with compassion, there's always a place in people's homes for that.
yeah. And I think what's beautiful about the pandemic, for me, is seeing all these creative people and business people pivot and just blossom into something different and something more, even more beautiful. I remember talking to friends in the beginning of the pandemic, everybody freaking out about their business. What am I going to do? No one's having parties or weddings or anything. And then they go on to start these other smaller businesses and now they're thriving, and it's just so beautiful to see that. So it's possible. It's out there. You just need to go get it.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna let that be what we end on because that is beautiful. And I want to ask, what's the best way for people to connect with you? Like, what do you want them to go to a website? Do you want them to find you on social? What's the best way for them to find you?
Instagram is probably the best. It's Nina Lance Art, and I'm very active on there. You can DM me, you can message me, you can leave me comments. I love hearing from people, and I love interacting with my friends on there. So Instagram is the best way to reach me.
Perfect. And I just want to say congratulations on the Saatchi Art little spotlight. Like that was
Thank
beautiful. I
you.
was so happy to see that for you. So
Thank
that's
you so much.
yeah, you're doing amazing work, and I'm so glad that other people are shining a light on all the awesome stuff that you're
Thank
doing.
you,
So
DJ. I'm so happy I met you.
and
I'm
me
so,
too.
yeah. Yay!
All right. Well, I'm gonna hop off because we have lots that we are both doing because we're parents and we're
Yeah.
artists and we do things. But I cannot wait for everybody to tune into you and to find you. And we're gonna do some awesome stuff. Even through the
Thank
end of
you so
2020, we got some good stuff going.
thank you so much. You're awesome.
Absolutely. It's good to talk to you, Nina, and I'll
Yeah,
talk to you again.
likewise. I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye
Bye.
bye.